Hi class, we are starting a new chapter, chapter 3, called decimal fractions. And a decimal fraction is a fraction whose denominator is a power of 10. And you all are familiar with the powers of 10. So you know that 10 to the first power is just 1 with 1 0. You know that 10 to the second power is a 1 with 2 zeros. And you know that 10 to the third power is a 1 with 3 zeros, or 1,000. Now let's apply that information you already know to fractions. So we have the fraction 3 over 10 to the first power. This is also read as 3/10. The second one, 3 over 10 to the second power. You know that 10 to the second power is 100, and we would read this fraction as 3 over 100, or 3/100. Now notice in these first two, it says 3/10 and 3/100. The endings are with a THS. Please keep that in mind. Look at letter C. 25 over 10 to the third power. That is the same as 25 over 1,000, which is read as 25 thousandths. 5 over 10 to the 0 power. You know that 10 to the 0 power equals 1. So when we have 5 over 10 to the 0 power, it is just 5 over 1, which is a whole number of just 5. And any fraction with a 0 on top is going to be 0 because it's not possible for it to be a fraction. Now let's look at our other examples, turning fractions into decimal form. So we have 4/10. 4/10 can be turned into a decimal, and you put 0.4, and it's read as 4/10. For B, 5 over 100, you have 0.05, and it's read as 5/100. Now 27 over 1,000 is 0.027, and that's read as 27 thousandths. Now let's examine, let's go into a little bit more depth. Okay, look at this next slide. This is example 3 in lesson 3.1. Look at the whole number 4. Know that when you have a whole number, that the decimal is just to the right. So it's going to be 4.0. If you have a number such as 130, the decimal is going to go to the right of 130, and it will be 130.0. Now I need you to look at this chart really carefully. You all have learned in chapter 1 the decimal places to the left of the decimal, and we're really going to hone into the decimal places to the right of the decimal. I want you to find the decimal place on this chart. Okay, to the left of it is our ones place, and we just call that units. Okay, let's look at, and then continuing on to the left, you know that we have tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, and millions. Now let's look to the right of this decimal. We have tenths. That is the first place after the decimal. The second place after the decimal is hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, 100,000ths, and millions. Notice the THS ending after all of those words, all of those places coming after the decimal point. And also notice the hyphen in 10,000ths and 100,000ths. In my picture, for the millionths place, it is cut off just a little bit. So I have just in the upper right-hand corner the number written out, typed out all the way for you. Okay, so reading and writing decimals less than 1. So A, 5 tenths. 0.5 is read as 5 tenths. This is just one, this is the first place right after the decimal. 0.6 is read as 6 hundredths. That is 2 places after the decimal. 0.007 is read as 7 thousandths. For D, 0.50 is read as 50 hundredths. You need to keep in mind the 0 that is after the 5. If there is a 0 after a number, you need to count that place. For E, 0.500 is read as 500 thousandths. You have to count the zeros and to the place that it is in, and then name it in that last place. F is 0.567 is read as 567 thousandths. Give yourself a second to let that sink in, and you may keep moving on. Now, I want you to think about how you would write each of these numbers as fractions. So let's go back and look at 0.5 in A. This also will help you if you get lost, confused, and you're not sure how to spell out or what words to use when you're writing your decimals. It often is helpful to write it in fraction form. Okay, so 5 tenths would be 5/10. For B, 0.06 would be 6/100. For C, 0.007 would be 7/1000. For D, we have 0.50, which is 50 hundredths. For E, we have 0.500, and this is 500 thousandths. Okay, and then F, we have 0.567, and this is 567/1000. Okay, so use this method to help you understand where the place value is when writing your decimals. Now, if I have a number 6.27, remember when I forbid you all to use the word and when it came to using whole numbers and numbers with commas. I told you never to use and. Well, here is where you will use the word and when dealing with decimals. So this is read as 6/27 hundredths. I'm going to write this out for you. This is 6/27 hundredths. For B, I'm going to write this long number out. So I have 175 thousandths. This is how we're going to write this out. 100, 75, and 6 thousandths. For C, I have 8.00004, and this is read as 8 and 400 thousandths. Okay, if you need to refer to the chart that I showed in the previous slide, please do when it comes to answering these questions on your homework. Okay, note that there is a hyphen for 100 thousandths. There's also a hyphen for 10 thousandths. For D, I have 8.400, and this is read as 8 and 400 thousandths. This is because I have a 0 in the thousandths place. Now E, I have a really big number here. Let's see if we can do this. Okay, so I have a number. My whole number is 100 7,000 comma, because there's a comma there, 60, and then I have a decimal, so I need to write and 756 thousandths. Remember, when you write numbers that are less than 100, you need to include that hyphen. The number 6 is in the thousandths place. That is why I wrote 756 thousandths. Okay, now let's talk about an easy way for you all to remember the place values. Here's a little trick that you can do. So to find the name of a decimal place, we write a 0 for each decimal place in the number and then precede all numbers by 0. So let me show you what I mean. So this is example 7. So let's say we have 0.0 and some number. I'm going to call it X. Now here is a little trick. You can write the number 1 where the decimal is and then just put zeros after it. So this helps you. You see this and you see that this is the hundredths place. If I have 0 point some number, I'm going to put a 1 where the decimal belongs, kind of make that a little bit darker for you, and then just put a 0 where the next number lies. This is the tenths place. If I have some number 0.00x, I'm going to put a 1 where the decimal belongs, and then I'm going to follow it with zeros. What number do I have here? I have 1,000. So when we're talking about decimals, we're going to call this thousandths. thousandths place. And then D, here's a bigger number. And then, okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros, and then an X. Okay, that's a lot of zeros that you have to read, and I understand that. So let's do this little trick. Let's put a 1 here, and then a 0. I'll just put a line to make sure that I actually have it lined up. And then I'm going to put my last 0 right underneath my last number. I'm going to count over 3 zeros and put a comma. Now that I've added the commas, this number should look pretty familiar to you. This is 1 million, but when we're talking decimals, we call this millionths. Okay, so if you have a number 6 places to the right of the decimal, it is in the millionths place. All right, so now let's talk about rounding decimals. Here are some rules in rounding decimals. You're first going to locate the digit in the round off place. You can circle it, you can highlight it, whatever is your method that will help you. If the first digit to the right of the round off place is less than 5, the digit in the round off place is not changed. It is unchanged. If the first digit to the right of the round off place is 5 or more, the digit in the round off place is increased by 1. Digits to the left of the round off place are unchanged. And then digits to the right of both the round off place and the decimal point are dropped. Digits to the right of the round off place and the left of the decimal point are replaced by zeros. Now let's look at a few examples. We have in example 1, it states round off 3.249 to the nearest tenth. So you see I have circled in blue the number that needs to be rounded. So I'm going to look to the number to the right of the 2, which is 4. And this number is not above 5. So that means that the 2 is not going to change. It's going to stay the same. So therefore, 3.249, when rounded to the nearest tenth place, is 3.2 tenths. In example 2, when we round off 473 and 28 hundredths to the nearest 10. Now this is a place that is to the left of the decimal. Okay, this is something that you have done in a previous chapter. So you can highlight, circle the number that you're rounding. You are rounding the number 7. That means you are going to look to the right, and that is a number 3. Now this number is below 5, so it is not going to, it's not going to change. Okay, we are going to drop the numbers to the right of the decimal and turn the 3 into a 0. So when 473 and 28 hundredths is rounded off to the tens place, it becomes 470. In example 3, when we round off 2 and 4,856 ten-thousandths, it's asking us to round it to the nearest hundredth. So the hundredth place is 2 places to the right of the decimal, and this, it is a number 8. we are going to look to the right of the 8, and it is a number 5. So you know that numbers that are 5 or above, that number will increase by 1. So this number is going to become 2.49, and the 5 and the 6 are going to be dropped because they are numbers past the decimal. Okay, so your answer would be 2.49. Last example, example 5. We are going to round off 64 and 982 thousandths to the nearest tenth. I have the 9 circled in blue. Now I look to the right, I look to the 8, and it is greater than 5. So then I need to round off this place, and it turns into a 0. It becomes a 10, which impacts the numbers to the left. Okay, so that 10, it carries over to the ones place, and this number becomes 65. Okay, you do not need to add the 0.0. It can be just 65. Okay, hope you have a fantastic day. Let me know if you have any questions on this homework.